Showtime! Welcome to the show. I'm Brent Holland. Welcome to Night Fright. Folks, this is a show that you're going to want to settle in for. If you're driving your car, your truck across the country, ease off that gas pedal. If you're at home listening on the radio, or perhaps online, get into your most comfy chair. Get the coffee going. Hot chocolate. Perfect night for a hot chocolate. It's chilly out there. Settle in. Get comfy. Pull a comforter right up. We're going to be talking about, you ready for this? Witches. Oh yeah, baby. Right here on Night Fright. Witches tonight. With none other than Judika Illes. I apologize right away. And you notice... And she's anxiously waiting the start of the show, and this is her new book. It's called The Weezer Field Guide to Witches, or the Weezer Field Guide, or the Wiser Field Guide, however they pronounce it. And this is the book, and we're going to be delving into that. Now, just imagine yourself going back a couple of hundred years ago and calling yourself a witch. This was not an occupation you wanted to call yourself, because obviously there was a lot of persecution going on. We're going to be talking about the difference between black magic tonight, white magic, and everything in between. Settle in, get ready. It's going to be a wonderful show. Strap in and hang on. Here we go.
There is a time to question. There is a time for answers. There is a time to challenge. There is a time to speculate. There is a time for change. There is a time for truth. The time is now. Welcome to Night Fright, your voice in the dark for paranormal and conspiracy radio. And now your host, Brent Holland.
Welcome, one and all. Settle in, get comfy, because we've got a show and a half for you tonight. Our guest tonight is Judika Illes, and we're going to be speaking about her new book, which is called The Weezer Field Guide to Witches, and I want to welcome her to the show right away for the very first time. Definitely not the last. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, fine. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I got to start off right away. I'm going to ask you... right away, are you a witch, practicing witch?
Depends on your definition.
Well,
and something I write about is the word witch. Everybody thinks they know what a witch is, but everyone has their own definition. So, do I eat babies? No. You know, if you think a witch is a Satanist, then no, I'm not. I'm not worshiping the devil. I'm not, living in a candy house and luring children into nefarious things. There are certain definitions of which, then yes, I would be. But you really have to clarify that, because what you were saying in the introduction is absolutely true. And it's not just a couple hundred years ago. Even now, there are, in some parts of the world, people are killed for whether or not they really are witches because somebody said they were.
Ah, that's interesting. Folks, if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Judika Illes. We're talking about her new book, The Weezer Field Guide to Witches. Easy way to get it. Just go to the www.nightfrightshow.com website. As always, click on the book cover. We'll take you right to a place from the comfort of your own home. Nobody wants to go out. It's chilly out there. You can get it right away. www.nightfrightshow.com. Now, let's start off with that then, Judika. Let's start off with your definition of what a witch is. And then I want to get into the persecution, which I am surprised to learn is still happening today. And I'm going to extend on that afterwards, too. And I want to ask you if you feel that it's because witches are primarily associated with your gender, women. But let's start off with your definition of what a witch is.
My definition, and it's I have always been attracted to witches since childhood, And I perceive witches very positively. And for me, a witch is someone who is aware of the subtle powers of the universe and who attempts to harness those powers and to live in harmony with the forces of nature. That, to me, would be a witch. And if you look in the Weiser Field Guide to Witches, you'll see that there are many ways to be a witch. There are, you know, you're right, they are associated with women, but there are many male witches too. There are witches, some witches are of the Wiccan religion, but there are also witches of every religion or no religion. There are atheist witches, which surprise people, but there you have it. There are many ways to be a witch. But the one bottom line that witches, self-identified witches, have in common is a sense of harmony with Earth, with plants and animals and the seasons. That would be the basic definition. But,
you know, it almost sounds, there's a lot of Aboriginal folks right here in Canada, as well as the United States. They live in harmony with the world, with the Earth. So much so that when you ask a Native person, an Aboriginal person, First Nations person, where they live, they identify with the ground, not in some kind of romantic sense, but they actually believe that Mother Nature is their mother. Is it much along the same lines as that, Judika?
Yes. And you will find there are scholars who believe that witchcraft is the original human religion. It is the primordial, and it's something, if you go all over the world, it is something that people have in common. Everyone, every culture, every nation, whether it's suppressed now or not, has the same sort of archetypal witch figure. People recognize it. You know, people have, wherever you go around the world, there are ghost stories and there are witch stories. It's really, really basic and bottom line. And so that is something you probably would find among Aboriginal people everywhere. It is really something that humans have in common. It's something that doesn't divide us, but that actually brings us together.
Now, is it, everything is energy, we know this. Science has proven that everything is energy.
Exactly.
Is this the manipulation of energy for good? And can that same energy be manipulated for evil?
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely. It's power. You know, it's a Paracelsus who said that every medication, you know, it's the difference between a medication and poison is the dosage. You know, and if you think about it, I mean, you can go to the drugstore and buy something and you can use it to heal yourself, or you can do harm with it. So the basic theory of spell casting is that everything radiates some sort of an energy, and a witch is someone who pays attention to this energy and attempts to harness it for their benefit. And ultimately, witchcraft and spell casting is intended to make people happy. Now, angry people, you know, maybe the things that make them happy aren't particularly beneficial. You know, so, I mean, angry people do angry things, whether they're witches, whether they're lawyers, whether they're, you know, college dropouts. So at heart, witches are people. And most people are okay people. And most people, you know, everybody has a bad day, but most people don't mean other people harm. But there are always exceptions, and that's true in any field. There's a tendency, I think, to hold witches to a higher standard. You know,
why is that? Why is that? Why do you feel?
No, it's a fear, I think. You know, witchcraft is something that people don't always understand, and they want to control it. And I think, in my personal opinion, and it's something I write about, and I have an earlier book called The Encyclopedia of 5,000 Spells, which is a very comprehensive book on spell casting. And my theory is the reason witches and other spellcasters, whatever you call them, warlocks, sorcerers, you know, wizards, my theory is that the reason they have been persecuted is that they're basically not obedient people. There's a basic anti-authoritarian streak, because it's, you know, it's basically saying, I'm not going to wait for you to fix it for me. I'll fix it for myself, and I'll fix it now, and I'll fix it the way I want to fix it. And it's not necessarily malevolent, but it is very independent. And through history, and maybe it's a bad influence. It's a bad influence on more passive people. Witchcraft is not for people who are passive. It's for people who wish to fix their own lives, to take their lives in the direction that they wanted to go, as opposed to what other people were, the direction people tell you should go in. So I've always thought that that's the reason that authority of every kind, secular, religious, any sort of organized authority, has always disapproved and attempted to marginalize shamans also. Witchcraft, yes. Shamans, very similar. And to me, it's a bit of a canary in a coal mine situation. If you look around the world and you, read the news, one of the ways of determining how totalitarian a society is how do they treat their witches and their spellcasters and their shamans. If they are completely, the Taliban absolutely does not approve. You cannot be reading cards in, Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. So, I mean...
Then we must be doing something right by practicing witchcraft if they don't approve, because bugger them.
Exactly.
Okay, folks, I just want to tell you who we're speaking with. We're speaking to a real live witch.
Next time I'll bring my hat.
And your broom, right?
Oh, no.
Judika Illes is our guest. She's got a book out.
You're listening to Night Fright, your voice in the dark for paranormal and conspiracy radio. The time is now. And now your host, Brent Holland.
It's called The Weezer Field Guide to Witches. Easy way to get it. As always, folks, I urge you to go to the www.nightfrightshow.com website, click on the book cover, and that'll take you right to a place where you can order it from the comfort of your own home. Now, I just want to also mention, while you're at the www.nightfrightshow.com website, if you're listening on the radio right now from coast to coast to coast, we also have an added feature, and that feature is called Night Fright Television, where you can actually see the video, and you can actually see Judika speaking with me in the same fashion. We're using Skype, and I'm recording the audio and the video, so you can grab the whole sensory experience, if you will. You can see the whole package, the audio, the visual. Let's go back into this, witches. Witches, warlocks, hexes, wizards, crones. Now, you'd mentioned the Taliban before.
Mm-hmm.
How can witchcraft be used to neutralize the Taliban? And I use the word neutralize purposely because I don't want to cause anybody death or anything like that, but I want them to stop what they're doing, especially the persecution of women.
Historically, there are precedents for this. There was a very famous incident during World War II in Britain when the German invasion was threatened and, was imminent, more than just threatened. Some very, very famous witches, Gerald Gardner, who is the founder of what we would call modern Wicca, and a woman named Dion Fortune, who might not want to be called a witch, but who was associated with magical practice. And they got together and they created a cone of power, a cone of protection that, to keep the Germans out. And in fact, the Germans never did invade. And, a lot of people, the thing with something like this is it's not a science experiment. You can never prove. Did it work? Was it something, would it have happened anyway? Who knows? But it certainly couldn't have hurt. For anything like this, any magic spell, what you need is a goal. The basic components, and their magic spells come in a wide, vast variety. Pretty much anything can be used in a spell, but the two most important components are the human component. A human being has to do it. And the second is a goal. You have to have a focus. You have to have a desire. You have to have something that you want to accomplish. So the goal for something like that, protection. Protection, let's say, for women You could, a goal to soften someone's heart, a goal to make people, think more, to encourage people to be more open-minded. The simpler the goal, the more likely it is to work. It's sort of just keeping things clean and simple. But yes, I mean, that is something that an individual could do. Prayer and spells are very close together. There's a very fine line between them. And the way I was always taught is the difference is prayer is a request versus a spell, which is a demand.
I see.
Spell is a little more assertive. This is what I need now.
As well as being a witch, you must be clairvoyant too, because that was my very next question. Especially when you mentioned protection, because there's that prayer of protection that most Christians practice, and most other religions do as well.
Yes. And most religions, although it's not really discussed, there's a folk magic, a folk religion aspect to them that comes very, very. It's a very fine line between at what point it's the officially approved religion and at what point, it's what people do. People will sort of, when people are unhappy, and especially disenfranchised people, in general, magic is the domain of the poor. Because if you have so much money and so much power, what do you need a magic spell for? If you already have money, you don't have to cast a money spell. You've got it. It tends to be people who, for one reason or another, are marginalized, are lacking power, are lacking opportunities. It's sort of the equalizer. It evens the playing field. So for something like that, you could certainly light candles, and send out positive energy and blessings to, let's say, the women of Afghanistan, empowering them, protecting them. You could send out a shielding energy. There are many ways to do something. In general, it works better if you're positive rather than negative. Mm-hmm. And I don't, personally, I have issues with the terms black magic and white magic because I don't see colors as having moral equivalence. In a lot of cultures, white is perceived as a very negative color because it's the color of death. Shrouds are white.
That's right.
Yeah. So, there are no white wedding gowns in Asia. People would be appalled. They wear red instead. In ancient Egypt, the name of ancient Egypt was the Black Land because black was associated with fertile soil. If you think about nice, rich, black earth, you're going to grow something on them. Their concept of what was negative magic was called red magic because they associated that with the barren soil of the desert. When the earth is red, you're not getting crops. It's not feeding you. It's hostile. And so their concept of hostile magic was red. I don't even remember where. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. You're talking about colors and how they're not. You don't like assigning things to colors in a negative connotation.
What you know is that you're sending out an intention, and rather than, I think people distract themselves with the colors. What is the intention and what is the emotion? Are you positive? Are you loving? Are you fearful and you want to protect? Are you angry and jealous? Because there is a boomerang effect to magic spells. They come back at you. Whatever you put out comes back at you. And it is better to be sending out loving, protecting energy than jealous, angry energy. So, and it's really easy to experiment with this. The easy experiment, you don't even need to cast a spell. Pick a day and smile at everybody. And of course, some people will look at you and think you're strange, but you'll see people will smile back. And somebody who was sort of in a grouchy mood, well, you smiled at them, and now maybe they'll be a little nicer to the next person. Versus the other side of that is just decide that you're going to be snippy to everyone you see for a couple hours, and you watch their moods change. You say something snippy to them, and somebody who was in a good mood before all of a sudden is looking at you with hostility. Magic spells are the same. Magic spells are not divorced from real life. They are part of... Real life's just complicated. Real life is more mysterious than a lot of people give it credit for. So it's just a component from it. So if you are an angry person who curses your neighbors, covets your neighbor's stuff, sends out that angry energy, whatever you want to call it. It's not beneficial for you. You will only increase your anger and only increase your unhappiness. Versus if you can focus it in a positive way, you are a blessing to yourself and to other people also.
Folks, Judika Illes is our guest this afternoon, tonight, whenever you're listening. We're speaking about her new book, which is called The Weezer Field Guide to Witches, and I urge you all to get it. Easy way, as always, www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on the book cover, and you'll see it readily available where that link takes you. I want to talk a little bit more about the darker side. You know, in Christianity, Christians believe that, of course, there's the devil and evil and cast out from heaven. How do you define God as a witch? Is God the omniscient energy that's flowing all around us and through us? Am I off track?
No, I mean, I can't speak for all witches because, and it's something that I do discuss in this book, particularly there are Christian witches, which surprises a lot of, I think a lot of witches are very surprised by this, but there are Christian witches, and there are Jewish witches, and there are witches of all faiths. I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, people, and then you have people who do identify, it's confusing because the same word is used to express a lot of concepts. And a lot of people use the words Wicca and witch as if they're synonyms. Wicca refers to a very specific modern religion based on ancient Western European traditions. And the Wiccan faith, people who are Wiccan would disagree with what you said. People who are Wiccan perceive that there is, it's a dualist in that there is a lord and a lady. And a lot of Wiccans will perceive that all the female goddesses are aspects of one goddess. All the male gods are aspects of the Lord. I come from more of a shamanic background. I perceive that there is a creator. I mean, to me, a creator encompasses the male and the female.
People have a health issue, so they pray to God, as they know God, for either a cure or relief from that issue. How would you tackle that issue?
Let me give you two examples, because Great. I'm going to give you two approaches. One is through a magic spell. And actually, the way I started writing my book, 5,000 Spells, is because people started asking me about healing, and I didn't know what to tell them, and I started researching. Magic spells are very good for ailments that you've already gone to the physician, and they can't diagnose you, they can't find a cure, you've gone through countless attempts and nothing is working. It's not a substitute for the physician. Magic spells work hand in hand with all the mundane ways. So I'm cautioning people, don't, go to the doctor first, because you may as well. I mean, if a doctor can fix you, that's the simplest method. But if it's not working, there are various spells, and many of them will incorporate things like herbs or candles. They tend to be pretty simple household goods like salt or garlic, vinegar, and there are various kinds of spells that you can then attempt to, it's basically an attempt to harness energy and fix your own attempts. And there is a big section on healing spells in 5,000 Spells, and there are different spells for different ailments, there's a reason there are 5,000 spells. No one individual needs 5,000 or more. It's just you have to find the spell that works for you. Because in the same way that one medication doesn't work for every individual, no one magic spell works for every one individual. So you have to find your spell. I mean, that's sort of the fun part of it, ideally, is to find what works for you. The alternative method, and probably what I would do, is a spiritual petition, and it is to ask for help. The doctors aren't helping, so let's take it to a higher authority. For instance, the Archangel Raphael, who is the Archangel of Healing, and you ask for help. And there are a lot of spirits from all over the world, a lot of saints in particular, who you ask for favors, and there is a method, and the method it's a bit of a negotiation. You ask them for help. You maybe give them a gesture to catch their attention, a little gesture of respect, often lighting candles. A lot of Christian people will go to a church and light a candle, but people also build home altars. And you light a candle and you say, let's say St. Anthony. St. Anthony is associated with certain illnesses, or St. Rita, who is associated with a lot of women's issues or with impossible causes, the illness that no one else can cure. And St. Rita is associated with the roses, and so maybe I would buy her a single rose. And, oh, St. Rita, please help me. And if you help me, and you want to be specific, and if you help me and you give them boundaries, and I need help with in a year, and you're simply drawing a contract. If you help me, I will give you XYZ, and they do not want your unborn children, and they don't want your born children. And this method is really ancient, and you'll see it as a warning in fairy tales by unsympathetic people. But basically, in general, what they want are good deeds from you. I will make a donation to a hospital in your name of such and such amount of money, or I will go and I will light, I'm giving you one candle now, but if I'm cured, every year I'll light a dozen candles. They tend to be pretty straightforward and small things.
So there's an exchange then that's involved. There's an exchange that's involved. Okay. Oh, I think I just lost you. Let's see if you're going to come back there. You're kind of working your way back. Okay, there we go. Folks, just to let you know, we're speaking with Judika Illes this afternoon. Her book, The Weezer Field Guide to Witches. And you can get it very easily, as always. I'm going to hold it up there better for the camera. www.nightfrightshow.com. www.nightfrightshow.com. Also, while you're there, please do check out Night Fright Show television, and all our guests now are being filmed, and you'll be able to see them for the duration of the show, as well as see the covers of the book, and there's all kinds of multimedia there for you to enjoy. If you're listening on the radio, when you get a chance, just go to the www.nightfrightshow.com. Lots of great archives there. A whole section on the JFK assassination. As you know, nobody does assassination stuff, conspiracy stuff like Night Fright, probably because we operate through the university network where we have a little bit more latitude, if you will. We can get away with certain things that perhaps commercial radio would shy away from. Great stuff there. And as always, as long as I can, that you can download all those shows for free. There's no charge associated with this whatsoever. If you'd like to make a donation, that would be great, because I operate this as a volunteer and I don't make a dime off of it so far. So maybe I'll get a spell for some financial aid. I'll ask Judika for that. Let's go back to her. Let's discuss some more of the persecution. I'd like to go back in time. I don't want people to forget the type of persecution that people went through. I think of Salem right away. Can we discuss that for a little bit, just to give a little bit of historical foundation to what witches have gone through?
Salem is the most famous case, and if you look at comic books and movies, you would think that every witch, every television show, they all come from Salem. But actually, on the scope of things, Salem is a pretty minor, it's major in terms of the impact historically, and it is unusual in that the people in Salem felt bad afterwards. They were embarrassed afterwards. Salem, the town of Salem now, is not actually where most of the historic events occurred. Salem Village changed its name to Danvers because they didn't want the notoriety. They were embarrassed. And that is a highly unusual thing. But there were other witch trials throughout the colonies, basically all the British colonies, the Spanish colonies in the Western Hemisphere. What we call witch persecutions begin in earnest slowly in approximately the 12th to 13th century. You have a couple incidences in France and in Ireland, and then they build up steam through the 16th century, and then 17th century, and then they gradually taper off. But the last witch trials in Europe, the last executions in Europe, were in the 18th century. They were late. There was the woman beheaded in Switzerland. Yeah, I mean, people are shocked with it. You know, they were late. They were rare, but people were still being, you know, the witches in Salem were not burnt. In general, Great Britain did not burn witches. They hung them. That doesn't mean that no witches were burned, and I've seen, you know, people write all kinds of stuff because they realize that the witches weren't burned in Salem, so they think no witches were burned, but that's not true. Witches were burned elsewhere, in Spain, where they would have auto da fes, throughout the continent. It varied. The witch persecutions, the witch panics, they came in waves and they rolled through almost all of Europe, very few exceptions. And so one of the problems, you'll see all these different numbers, you know, how many witches were killed, and people have these arguments about numbers. But you have to figure out how many centuries are you counting, and which countries are you counting? Are you only counting Western Europe, or are you counting Croatia and Transylvania too? Because they were killing witches there also. So, you know, they're nebulous numbers. The worst place to be a witch, or to be, and it doesn't even matter if you were a witch. The important thing is that somebody said you were a witch. Once you were, one of the things that there's a money trail. I mean, maybe everything leads back to money. If you were convicted, your goods were taken away. Everything was confiscated. So it was sometimes to people's advantage to say that somebody else was a witch.
Are you open today about your being a witch?
I used to be this really private person, and then I wrote a book called, it is now available as Pure Magic, but my first book was originally, it went out of print, and Weezer Books changed the name. It was originally called Earth Mother Magic, and quite honestly, I didn't think anybody was going to read it. So, in hindsight, maybe I should have used an alias. I wasn't thinking like that, just for some privacy. But once you're published, it's kind of out there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look me up, I've got, I've got an encyclopedia of witchcraft. I've got this field guide to witches. I've got a book on spells. I've got a book that will teach you how to speak with spirits. It's sort of too late for me to go back in the broom closet.
The broom closet? Pun fully intended. Folks,
Okay.
Judika Illes is our guest. She's a living, breathing witch. And not that stereotypical witch. If you've been joining us, you understand exactly where she's coming from now. The new book is called The Weezer Field Guide to Witches, readily available, www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on the book cover, and that'll take you to a place where you can get it online. How did your family feel about you coming out of the broom closet?
I don't have a family that... I don't come from a particularly conservative family, and I had relatives who, years ago were, attending seances. There was a point where seances were very fashionable. So, back sort of the heyday of spiritualism, it doesn't offend them. I think they'd like me to make more money. They would be happier if I had they'd be happier if I was an attorney or a doctor or something, but for very practical reasons. So I get email from people whose families are very negative, and, people who, their families beat them or shame them or, try to send them away to institutions. I really was very blessed. I had nothing like that.
I studied Kabbalah at the Montreal Torah Center.
Me too.
In Montreal as well?
No, not in Montreal, but I think that's also that, I don't come from a Christian background.
Yeah.
So I think that makes a big difference.
Perhaps,
so,
yeah, absolutely.
It's a different attitude. They tolerate me. They may not agree with me. I get eye rolling. I'm not sure, but I'm not evil. I'm not,
I know, yeah. Folks, we're speaking with Judika Illes. Her book, of course, is The Weezer Field Guide to Witches, and she's a living, breathing witch. I want to get into the book a little bit. I just opened it up on dowsing. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Dowsing, also known as water witching, is it is a method of finding things. It's essentially, you can almost think of it as a really big pendulum, and they use pendulums for people who like spirit boards or Ouija boards. A lot of people prefer to use a pendulum because you can do it by yourself. You don't need that other person, and it's clearly it's in your hands. It's sort of a less stress than the little planchette that you have to, you're so afraid to move it that it never moves. But dowsing is used to find water. It is used also, corporations use it to find things like oil. A lot of these methods, people act like, they won't discuss this in public, but in private, big corporations use a lot of these methods, so they'll look for oil. They've used it to look for missing people. Basically, the rituals use a forked stick, a dowsing rod, some sort of a rod that will actually lead you almost magnetically toward what it is that you're searching for. And part of it is the tool, but part of it is the dowser. And this is where people associate it with witchcraft, because, not everyone can do this. In the same,
So there becomes a symbiotic relationship between the actual energy of the person and the energy of the tool, for lack of a better way?
The tool is a conduit. The tool is almost a conduit. Magic wands, too. People, Harry Potter, people get very excited about what kind of a wand you have. It's just, you can use a stick. Ultimately, you can use your finger. It's just a focusing tool. Oh. The tool focuses, it harmonizes the dowser with what they're looking for. They're looking for something hidden, and this enables them to find it. It is a bit of a paranormal art, for lack of a better word. How does a guy holding a stick find water? And yet, that's how they've been digging wells for millennia. So some people can do it.
You have to be predisposed to it, do you think, or is it a skill that can be learned?
Yeah, you can be learned, and any kind of a magic spell, a human being can do it. Some people are better. Some people it comes easier, but that's the same thing with tap dancing.
That's a good point. That's a very good analogy, actually. Very good.
With learning how to read or anything. Some people will always be better at something than someone else, but effort goes a long way. If you really effort and desire, if you want to learn something and you're willing to ask somebody to teach you if necessary, you can learn. If you're going to go off to a desert island and there aren't enough water sources, it might be good to send someone to learn how to be a water witcher before you went. It's just sort of a practical thing. It's worth the investment at that point.
I think so too. That's a good point, folks. We're speaking with Judika Illes this afternoon. We're at this tonight whenever you're listening, and the book is called The Weezer Field Guide to Witches. I've opened it up. We're going through a few things here. Raccoons. Yeah. What have raccoons got to do with witches?
In native, various animals are associated with witches. And the stereotypes in the Western Hemisphere are owls and black cats. Yeah. But in Africa, the hyena is the animal that's most closely associated with witchcraft.
I didn't know that.
Yes. If they see you feeding a hyena, you could be in trouble. A lot of witchcraft accusations come from, being accused of transforming into a hyena or being seen in the proximity of hyenas, or somebody thinks you look like a hyena. But in native North America, raccoons were very closely associated with witches. They have the little masks, and they have hands. They're dexterous. They have hands, and they can wash food, and they're tricky, and they come in the night. They're sort of these little mysterious. They're mysterious, and they're curious, and they're smart. And those are things that are associated with witches also. I wanted to go back to something you said. You were discussing Kabbalah, and then we traditionally, there are two types of Kabbalah. There is, the code word for it is, there is the spiritual Kabbalah, the real Kabbalah, and then there's practical Kabbalah. And practical Kabbalah, and this is old, this is going back centuries, so this is not just, Madonna. Practical practical Kabbalah is the code word for folk magic. It's practical Kabbalah. We're not discussing, the heavens. We're discussing I need to make a living. We're discussing that, I can't have a baby. I can't find a husband. My husband is beating me and he has to stop. That's practical. They're practical issues. And the code word for that was practical Kabbalah.
I didn't know that. You see, folks, you listen to the Night Fright Show and you get educated. I get educated every show. I had no idea.
Yeah.
We always think, folks, I always come back to this. We think that for centuries, people have thought to be unique and different from each other, and that's admirable in a certain sense. But you know what? We all put our pants on one leg at a time, don't we? That's what it comes down to.
We all have to eat. We all want love. We all need a roof over our heads.
That's right.
The basic things we all, if you eliminate sort of the bigger pictures, the real estate issues, the politics, but basically people are people.
Absolutely. And, I think it's in the Quran, of all things, that it says that there is as many ways to come to God as there is people in the world. In other words, each person comes to God in their own way.
It's a lovely thing to say. Yes.
It really is. It's beautiful. And that's what nature is. And, we've been given this beautiful planet to live on and exist and communicate with each other through our words, our gestures, etc. And it's a shame that folks, we had mentioned the Taliban before, have perverted that to an extreme, again, to identify themselves as more unique than somebody else. So let's continue with this great book.
You're listening to Night Fright, your voice in the dark for paranormal and conspiracy radio. The time is now. And now your host, Brent Holland.
Are there historical cases, or I shouldn't say historical, but folklore cases where there has been shape-shifting from witches?
Yes, and perhaps not just folklore if you don't look at it entirely realistically.
Okay, let's go there.
People look at things very literally, that, I'm going to turn into a wolf and you're literally going to walk. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that it may not mean that. It may be more that if you need to draw on the power of an animal, let's say you need to walk down a street that's scary and you're afraid. And, radiating fear tends to attract the wrong kind of attention. And so what you want to do is not transform literally, but radiate. It is radiating the power of a dominant predator, radiating the power, let's say, of a lion, of something that will, radiate that confidence that you're the king of the jungle. And people will make room for you until you can get home safely and go back to being your own meek self. But a lot of it is self-transformation, not so literal. I think if you're looking for literal all the time, it's you'll be disappointed. But there are a lot of folkloric stories of either witches transforming into animals, or animals sometimes transforming into witches. Just foxes turn into witches, and cats turn into witches. It's the animal that is able to transform into the human.
Isn't that interesting?
Rather than the other way around.
And there is a distinct parallel. We were talking about First Nations folks before, and of course, a lot of shape-shifting going on in their history as well, in their, I'm hesitant to call it a religion, their belief system, I guess you could say. So that's very interesting as well. Let's continue. Odin. Here's a fella. Mr. Odin.
I love him. He's controversial too. Mr. Odin is the All-Father. He is the leader of the Norse deities are actually divided into two if you read through Norse mythology. There's the Aesir and the Vanir. And Norse, Odin is the leader of the Aesir. He's Thor's, according to Marvel Comics, he's Thor's dad. But Odin is a shaman and a shapeshifter. And, he radiates fear. It tends to attract the wrong kind of attention. And so what you want to do is not transform literally, but radiate the power of an animal. Let's say you need to walk down a street that's scary and you're afraid. You need to radiate fear. It is radiating the power of a lion, of something that will, radiate that confidence that you're the king of the jungle. And people will make room for you until you can get home safely and go back to being your own meek self. But a lot of it is self-transformation, not so literal. and a magical practitioner. One of the primary legends of him is how he sacrificed his eye to drink from the well of knowledge. It was worth it for him to drink a sip from the well of knowledge. He wants to know everything. He wants to learn every magical art. He hung himself from the world tree, basically sacrificed himself, very much like a First Nations Sundance, to obtain the runes, the system of the magical runes. And runes are, they're an alphabet. They're sort of an alphabet that's now mostly associated with Northern European traditions. There are Anglo-Saxon runes, there are Nordic runes, but each one, you can write a word with them. They have a sound, like, ABC. They're very similar, but each one also has a magical power and a spiritual power, so they can be used in magic. Also, and Odin is the rune master. He is, in a lot of ways, the basis for the North American concept of Santa Claus. That the guy who travels at night, that Odin is a traveler. You have to be nice to him when he shows up. I don't know if he wants milk and cookies. He might want, meat and something more substantial. But like hospitality, he likes people who are gracious.
You have a delicious sense of humor. I like that.
Yeah, people who are gracious.
Folks, bear with us. We're having a bit of problem with Skype. It's breaking up, but bear with us. It gets better, it gets worse. It's probably due to the snowstorm that you're experiencing as well. Right now it's clear here in Kingston, Ontario, where we're broadcasting from. You're listening to www.nightfrightshow.com on the website, or if you're listening on the radio from coast to coast to coast. Our guest today, this afternoon, whenever you're listening, is Judika Illes, and let me just get this book correctly framed. There we go. And the book is called The Weezer Field Guide to Witches. And Judika, of course, is a real live living witch. And we're breaking down some of the old stereotypes. We're talking about a little bit of the history of the persecution and the positive aspects of being a witch. And, everybody's an individual, folks. And like I said before, everybody comes to God in their own way. Let's talk a little bit about botanical.
Plants are the most prevalent material associated with spellcasting.
Now, why is that?
I think because, in going back to something we discussed earlier, is that witches and healers the history of witches and the history of healing are so closely intertwined. If you go back thousands of years, every village had a witch. And I should point out that the word witch derives from the same Anglo-Saxon source as the word wisdom and wise. So another way of defining witch is a wise person, somebody who knows stuff. And one of the things they knew were, which plants. I mean, imagine in a world without pharmacies, which plants healed which ailments, or, which plants you should stay away from, which plants had visionary powers, which plants could be used to, concoct a love spell. And if that's not so far-fetched if you think that perfume is all flowers. And why do people put on perfume often?
Precisely.
Very
good. Very good.
To attract somebody.
Sure. Yeah.
So, you go to the encounter, a descendant of an ancient love potion.
Now, do you take different elements?
And then you have certain botanicals.
I was going to ask you, do you take those various
I'm sorry,
plant,
I didn't hear you.
Do you take those various plant elements and brew them or mix them? Everybody thinks of the big cauldron, right, from the beginning of Macbeth.
Yeah, you can, although, I would say probably, most witches are using their kitchen stove. In North America, people are using whatever is at hand. Yeah, I make oil. That's my specialty. I like little bottles. I like little perfume oils. There are various magical oils. Yeah, exactly.
You put them on? Okay.
Various little...
You're listening to Night Fright, your voice in the dark for paranormal and conspiracy radio. The time is now. And now your host, Brent Holland.
I like little potion bottles. I like little potions. I like brewing up little oils that you can use for various purposes. You can use them for candle burning. That's what I like to do. But, there are also certain plants that are associated with witches. Mandrake roots. Mandrake roots are, actually the German word for mandrake, and there are a bunch of movies named Mandrake, is Alron. And Alron derives from a word that's similar to rune, like Odin with the runes, because runes are associated with witches. And so there are all kinds of certain plants, certain trees that are traditionally identified with witches.
That's interesting, As I'm looking right now, this studio is situated on Lake Ontario. I'm looking out over the lake. Is water an important element?
Yes. Well, all the elements are important. Water and fire, air. And if you go to Asia, they consider metal an element, and metal is actually iron. Is the thing that's really closely associated with witches. Magical practitioners have been associated with healing, but also with metal workers, with iron workers. And if you think back, when to the beginning of the Iron Age, that was the ability to forge iron, to forge steel. It was a big secret.
That's right.
Closely guarded, and it was often in clans where the men would do the heavy labor and women would do healing.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Now, have you...
Parts of the Middle East, if you go to like among Bedouin societies, it's still very similar. You have these ironworking clans who will travel and do this combination of, they'll fix your scissors and you can buy cutlery, and they also do folk healing.
Wow. Now, you had mentioned before the boomerang effect, if you send out something negative. Has anything ever happened to you that has unnerved you or scared you?
I had somebody do something not so nice to me once. But you don't have to be a magical practitioner. There are people who, I can't tell you how many emails I get asking if, I think someone cursed me. But something I would like to emphasize, because I had a negative experience like that, is that curses have antidotes. Curses can be removed. I see people who are...
Can I just interrupt you for a second? So you can actually curse somebody even if they don't want... Like, I always thought...
You don't have to believe it. Yes. I mean, not everybody is cursed, and people who want to curse people, not every spell works. So it's not that curses are necessarily more effective. So somebody may threaten to curse you, doesn't mean they know how to do it. But you don't have to be a magical practitioner to curse someone. That is the easiest type of magic. Anybody can do that. You just have to be angry enough.
And once again, that curse can come right back and smack you in the face, right?
Yeah. I mean, if somebody has ever, and quite frankly, most cursing is done, it's not random. It's not someone who you never knew. It's mostly families. I mean, real curses, it tends to be family members who are fighting about something. Yeah, exactly. It's sort of nasty stuff. But if you are angry enough and if you can focus your anger, and a lot of the people who curse don't mean to do it. They had a bad day. And someone said something really stupid to them. The woman who cannot get pregnant, and it's been 10 years, and she cannot get pregnant, and she has, used all her savings, and she's done every kind of a health, procedure that has caused her pain, and she still, nothing is working. And then someone in the supermarket who has no way to know this, the woman in front of her complains that, oh yeah, it's so hard to sleep because my kids keep me up. Well, it's the wrong thing to say to someone.
Understood. And
at that moment, it's like, do you know the feng shui concept of the poison arrows? It's like that arrow coming. Well, it's the concept of this energy, very sharp energy that comes out of your heart and just finds a target. And the best way to avoid being cursed, don't brag. Don't ever brag. A lot of places will, say, don't brag about your good fortune, especially to people who you don't know. Because you don't know. You don't know what sort of painful memories you're awakening. So, don't brag, don't boast. Mm-hmm. Be a little bit circumspect.
Lashon hara.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's the eye, Lashon Hara. It's the eye. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Poo, poo, poo. And no, there's a reason for that. The reason for that is the evil eye is perceived as an anti-fertility force. It dries out. It's barren. Saliva, moisture counteracts it. And so that little poo, poo, poo is spitting. Literally is thought to counteract the evil eye. In Italian, they call it malocchio, the evil eye. So, I mean, it is. I mean, when Grandma was spitting, she had a reason. She may not have known what her reason was. She might have forgotten. She just saw her grandma do it. But
just like you throw salt over your shoulder, right?
Salt is a protective device. And salt, like people who watch Supernatural, that part is true. The use of salt as protection. Very easy man fell if you're scared. If you're alone in a house and you think the house is haunted and you're really scared, you can keep some packets of salt in your pocket, like from the fast food place. Make a circle of salt and stay inside until you're feeling better.
That's wonderful advice. That's great advice. We got to wrap up now, but you know what? I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's been wonderful. I've learned a ton, folks.
Me too.
Folks, our guest this afternoon, tonight, whenever you're listening, has been Judika Illes, and her book, just let me frame that perfectly, there we go, The Weezer Field Guide to Witches, readily available, as always, at www.nightfrightshow.com. Just click on that book cover, folks, and it'll take you right to a place we can order it online, which will be right at Judika's website. And Judika, can they email you, the folks that are listening right now, if they have questions?
Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
I'm going to warn people that I'm a little slow right now because I am working on some of my encyclopedias are really big books, and I am working on a manuscript right now. It'll be done probably in a month or so. So please feel free to answer me. Don't take it personally if I'm slow answering you back, but I will. My email address, my website, judikailles.com, JUDIKAILLES.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I'm easy to find.
Good. And I'll put those links, of course, folks, on the website, www.nightfrightshow.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, friends.
All the very best to you.
To you, too.
Thank you. I'm Brent Holland from Night Fright. See you next time.
You're listening to Night Fright and your host, Brent Holland. The time is now. Your voice in the dark for paranormal and conspiracy radio.